Hi, hello, and welcome to another episode of The Dunker Spot. We are part of 342 Productions. I am your host, Nekias Duncan, and joining me as always is my co-host, Steve Jones Jr. Steve, how are you doing, sir?
Aha, feeling good, feeling great, happy to be here, excited to be here. Thank you, Dunkers, for once again embracing your bounce. Dunker Nation, let's ride. YouTube, hi. Hello. Thank you. Nekias, I don't know about you, but I sure am ready to hoop it up.
I am ready to hoop it up indeed. A fun weekend of hoops. Glad to be back, honestly. There's a hectic weekend for yours truly, but we got there. A lot of fun basketball to talk about. We did have some basketball end on the NBA side, which is where we are going to start, funny enough. The Boston Celtics. They lose game 4 to the Dallas Mavericks on Friday. They respond with a big win in game 5 against the Mavericks, a 106-88 victory on Monday night. Your Boston Celtics are your NBA champions. 4-1 series win. They finished the season 80-21 overall. So with that game 4 loss on Friday, they just missed out on becoming the 12th team in NBA history to win 80% of their games in a season, regular season plus postseason combined. So just missed out on that, but I would say winning 79% of your games is pretty darn good. But again, 18-point win in the game 5. Jason Tatum with a near triple-double, 31 points, 8 rebounds, 11 assists, and a couple of steals. Jaylen Brown filling the stat sheet as well, 21 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. Jaylen Brown was your finals MVP. 15 and 11 for Drew, 14 and 8 for Derek White, 9 and 9 for Al Horford. For the Mavericks, 28, 12 and 5 for Luka Doncic, though he did have 7 turnovers. A quiet scoring night for Kyrie with 15 points. But how about these Celtics, man? I have game thoughts, but I think you kind of have to start with saluting the champions because, duh, they're the champions. But this was objectively one of the most dominant teams we have seen in NBA history. To win 79% of your games, to have the most efficient offense in NBA history, to have a top 5 defense or top 3 defense, depending on if you use NBA.com or Clean the Glass, whatever you have there, to be elite on both sides of the ball, to have the level of versatility that Boston had, and ultimately displayed throughout this postseason run, being able to shapeshift what they needed, where they needed it from, and who they got it from. It was impressive stuff to me. And I think you saw in the game 5, as the Celtics have been known as like the 3-point team, we want to spread you out, want to get these threes up, volume matters, etc. They put their heads down in game 5. And as they've been doing throughout this postseason run, Jason Tatum in particular, we're going to get downhill. We're going to put pressure on you. We're going to use our spacing to generate fruitful looks. And you're not going to have a good time. And I think something that we've talked about throughout this series in particular is the battle that Dallas has had in trying to keep size at the rim. How do we manipulate our matchup so we can keep some size at the rim, ward off some of these rim attempts, make Boston work deeper into the clock? Boston, with the way that they manipulate their spacing and in their pick and roll attack in particular, like let's get to some of these slips against these switches. Let's get downhill. Let's quickly get 2 on the ball. Let's put strain on you. They were able to counter some of what Dallas was doing defensively. It's where you see Drew Holiday slipping in pick and roll and getting downhill and making reads from there. And even when they didn't go with any particular action, it's just Jaylen Brown, I am winning one-on-one and forcing help. Jason Tatum, I am winning one-on-one and forcing help. And when you have that kind of balance, Dallas eventually, it just felt like they could not get enough stops. They could not get out in transition, one of their lowest transition rates of the series in the game 5. And on the other end, like Boston just did a really good job of dictating terms defensively. Dallas couldn't win with drives in the same way. You saw a little bit more help creeping in on some of the Luka drives in the game 5. And ultimately, as the series went on, Boston showed a little bit more help, but still being selective with how they sent it. It just felt like a microcosm of all the different things that they can do to you on either end of the floor. And when they hit those notes, it's been proven throughout the year, like not many teams, if any, can really compete with Boston when they're firing on all cylinders. And so I've just impressed with what they were able to put together this year. An impressive series win in this one, even though a couple of games did get tight. Again, the game 4, they just flat out lost that one. A wonderful last-ditch effort by the Mavericks there in the game 4. But I was just impressed with what the Celtics were able to do all year long. And even as we talked about them with some of the late game offense stuff, it was still through the lens of, we know what this can be. And even with some of the kinks, it hasn't really mattered like that. And ultimately, it didn't matter. You win 80 games in a year, you deserve to tip your cap. I just want to quickly salute the Boston Celtics.
Nah, I mean, it should be a salute. You tip your cap to the Celtics for the type of performance that they had. You tip your cap to the Celtics for what they did in this entire postseason run. 80-21 is 80-21. You look at the playoffs and the journey, it was the culmination of what they did. They held their opponents to under 100 points in, I think, 11 out of 19 playoff games. That's not easy. So when you're able to trust that journey, trust the path, trust the game plan, and trust each other, these are the results you get. Boston was able to find different ways to win different games. And if we're talking about just this finals, they kept Dallas in the box. I think game 4 was Dallas showing, hey, this is our path to victory. The problem is, did they have another path to victory? Boston was able to win different types of games during this postseason, especially in the series. And I think it just speaks to the overall growth in what they put together to be able to take a Dallas team that was very good and made a very good run in the playoffs and tell them, hey, your pick and roll attack, it's out the window. We are putting a wing on a big. We are taking that away. We're going to start out with Kyrie and Luka. You have to cook. And then, hey, we're going to send help when we want to send help. And we're going to turn that up as the series goes on. And so if we're going Celtics wide, it's hard not to salute them. Like, I know a lot of folk are going to point to who they played on this playoff run and which players were or were not available. And I think that's a conversation where you're fighting upstream a little bit. But there are facts. Like, this is a team that lost game 2 at home in the first round and the second round. And I know that conference finals against Indiana is just going to be stamped in history as a sweep, but they won 3 out of those 4 games by a total of 11 points. They played a big chunk of the playoffs without Kristaps Porzingis. Got him back and then had to figure out how to, on the fly, win without him and accomplished it. So I think it's a big salute for them. And you just think about what Joe Mazzulla did, how Brad Stevens put this team together, how the roster just, came together. It's huge. Like, being able to weave in Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis into what Boston does, I don't think they get enough credit for how seamlessly that kind of went through. To continue to get the most out of Derek White, to get even more buy-in from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, to trust the bench all season long, to have this team compete at a high level every night, that's not easy. To get them to believe that they can achieve and win in different ways, that's not easy. To have that kind of discipline and working to control what they control on the court, knowing the shots they want to get to and taking the right ones. Like, it always felt like there was a belief for Boston, and it was just them managing to get back to what they do. And so that kind of stood out to me. And then the other thing was just the two-way lineups and, like, being able to have different guys who can accomplish different things and have that versatility on the floor for the majority of the time. Like, that's hard. We'd have this conversation every time, and it's almost free agency season, transaction season. When these teams put together the talent, I always ask, hey, how does the defense deal with this? Who has the capital to deal with player A, B, and C?
Yeah.
Boston did. Hey, here's Drew Holiday and Derek White as defenders causing chaos. Jaylen Brown got better on that end. I hope he gets credit he deserves. Jason Tatum held up his end of the bargain. Mm-hmm. And we trust our bigs do their job. If Porzingis can protect the paint, stay in the drop, we're good. If Al Horford can mix in a switch or stay in the drop, we're good. We can put Tatum on a big and make that a switch. Take that away from you. And the people you do want to attack, when they are in the game, guess what? The other people we named are in help positions. So It's not like it's a true one-on-one type deal. So, I mean, I think that's where it really stands out to me. Actually, I looked back at my notes, Nekias, and then I'll toss it back to you. From October, when we did the preview, right? Mm-hmm. It was when Drew Holiday, the trade happened. A Drew, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford lineup is going to cause chaos.
And lo and behold,
well, looks like it did.
I'd say that happened. Yeah. So now you have me scrolling my Celtic notes.
No, I was looking into it. Like, I was just like, I went back to the preview. Like, if that's going to be the lineup with Porzingis, it's look at the space they can create. Look at the versatility of that lineup. Mm-hmm. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, it's funny, like going back through because we did it kind of formulaic. Like, what are we excited about? What are the questions, etc. Line up you're excited to see potential X factors. X factors for me: Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard. uh, I would say Al Horford surely became important, and Peyton Pritchard just hit every heave that he tossed up in this series. So if you're talking about swing plays, momentum plays, he did that. The questions that I had were decision making for the Celtics, kind of ties into the late game thing. And I feel like they ultimately nailed that in this series and throughout this postseason run. Interior depth, as you mentioned, Kristaps did miss a bunch of time during this postseason. And throughout the regular season, it's like, hey, how much do you want to lean on Al Horford? Because we know what he can do in the postseason. But will you find yourself in a situation to where you may have to use him too much if Kristaps isn't healthy, etc. And Jason Tatum in the middle. Longtime dunkers know I've wondered, hey, what's up with this floater with Jason Tatum? What do these pull-ups look like? When does he decide to go to some of these shots? And so to watch and kind of zoom out with Boston overall, but to kind of watch all of their key pieces answer the questions that we had of them, either completely or they answered them enough for Boston to win this title. It was a lot of fun. Let's go back to Jaylen Brown really quickly, who again won Finals MVP. I have a question on that front a little bit later, but for now, Jaylen Brown won Finals MVP. Heading into the year for me, okay, he can make just about any shot in the book. When is he getting to them? When he gets downhill, when he sees help, is he making the right read? Is he avoiding that help or is he making the right passes? Defensively, he's a dog on the ball. What does he do when he's spaced? What is he doing when he has to split on the back end? Can he nail those things? And to watch Jaylen Brown grow in virtually every facet of his game this year, and then to have an exclamation point this postseason, your Eastern Conference Finals MVP, your Finals MVP, slammed the door multiple times throughout this postseason run with big shots or big defensive plays. In this series, just flat out taking on the Luka Doncic assignment, and Boston never feeling the need to have to switch that. We didn't get Jaylen Brown on Luka for the first two games. Oh no, Luka's comfortable. Hey, here's Drew Holiday in game 3. Or here's Tatum in game 3, or anything like that. The fact that Jaylen Brown held his own with that and was able to get some pick sixes or some deflections, was able to provide some secondary rim protection, just to showcase the improvement of what he was able to do off ball defensively this year. That stuff's fun for me. I think it's fair to have questions about players or about teams, but like the fun is watching them figure that out. And Jason Tatum largely figured that out. With Jason Tatum, like, do I feel like he has an A+ floater right now? Like, no, I don't think he's still there. But in terms of his overall comfort inside the arc, he was more intentional about being a driver this year. You saw the free throws perk up. You saw where him learning some of these foul tricks, when to go to the rip throughs, how to seek out contact with the body, and just his general pacing as a driver. We saw all that improve. His ability to play through contact improved this year. And something that we've been talking about the last couple of years, and you specifically have highlighted it a lot, his growth as a playmaker popped all throughout this postseason. And it kind of had to, considering like the jumper largely wasn't there for him throughout this postseason run. He had to provide value in other ways. And that's where you see the defense. You already alluded to the versatility of being able to put Tatum on a big and taking pick and rolls off the table. Again, the improvement as a driver and the passing. If Jason Tatum drew 2, you were in trouble. If Jason Tatum drew 1.5, you were in trouble. With the way that he was mapping out the floor, how quickly he was making these decisions, the placement on some of these passes, the different types of passes that he was tossing, all of that was very important growth for Jason Tatum. And it just feels like a whole lot of long-term storytelling with the Celtics group and with the Jays in particular. Like it's nice. Like I mentioned it or tweeted about it heading into the conference finals. Hey, one of Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Edwards going to win a title this year. We are just getting new blood. And any of those 4, obviously they have teammates and all the good stuff, but like any of those 4 would have some sort of story to tell if they were able to pull that off. And with the Celtics, with the Jays, so many deep playoff runs, so many questions about if they should stay together, if they need to make moves. Like we've talked about, just on our pod or with JJ, with some of the quote unquote issues about having Tatum and Jason and Jaylen as your top 2 players in terms of like using them together in actions. They're like size, so they could be switches, that kind of thing. But like being able to have Jason Tatum on one side and Jaylen Brown on the other side and being able to just keep constant strain on defenses, that worked. it's nice for them to get that kind of payoff and to win to this degree. So I'm just impressed. I'm happy for what they were able to put together. And then you go on down the line. Drew Holiday gets title number 2. Al Horford finally gets one after being one of the most versatile bigs of the modern era. He gets one. Kristaps, all the injuries and things he had to deal with. Like Kristaps gets one. He plays a major role on this team, like zooming out for the entire season. Obviously, again, missed most of the postseason. But like he took Boston over the top in terms of their spacing principles, in terms of the defensive versatility. We can switch a bunch, but we don't have to now. We can just funnel this inside to the 7-3 monster. And now, even if we don't get to the rim a lot offensively, y'all aren't getting there either. And it just further leans into Joe Mazzulla's, his not insistence, but just the value he places on winning the math battle. Kristaps helps you shape that on both ends of the floor. And for Joe Mazzulla to have this kind of payoff, amidst all the conversations about the first year there, what's it going to look like moving forward? He is the head coach and championship winning head coach of a dominant basketball team on both ends of the floor. And as you alluded to, just the general belief that Boston had, you don't have that belief without a coach that you can trust or without a coach that can instill principles that you believe in. And so Joe Mazzulla deserves the hat tip as well. Like I don't have much else but praise for Boston right now.
No, man, I think it all kind of ties together. It really does all tie together. To stick with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and I like how you alluded back to the fact that they can create a wave. You also got to think about, hey, Drew Holiday can be a screener. We saw the impact of that, especially in that clinching game where he kind of set the tone where it's like, all right, this little moment where you guys are switching, let's make this uncomfortable. I'm going to slip out. What are you guys going to do? Now it's 2 on the ball. You mentioned the storytelling as far as long-term goes. As soon as Tatum and Brown, one of them were able to get 2 on the ball, that's when Boston went on a different trajectory to me. And I think having the talent around them, but also getting them to buy into making those type of plays every night. Like you look at the final series, Tatum averaged 7.2 assists a night.
Mm-hmm.
He averaged 6.3 assists during the playoffs. Those are not similar to the regular season numbers. Jaylen Brown averages 5 assists a night in the finals. That's growth to understand how to have an impact and how important their drives and their playmaking is for the overall flow of the Celtics offense. And again, it ties back to the trust. Porzingis set the tone in the game 1 for the Celtics as far as, hey, that switching's cool. I'm going to score. Obviously, he went away. Al Horford, steady as a rock. But you just saw the overall growth. And, a big salute to Jason Tatum. Not only did he finally get the championship, but he's stamped. He is also the 5th player in NBA history to have a 30-point, 10-assist game night in a NBA Finals clinching win. Walt Frazier, James Worthy, Michael Jordan, Stephen Curry. And now Jason Tatum. I believe Jerry West did it, but they didn't win. Salute to Jerry West. But funny that Drew Holiday once again goes to a team and wins a championship in his first year.
That guy seems pretty good, huh?
It's a really good defender. He had so many sequences where, hey, I'm causing chaos on defense, and then I'm also driving on the other end. What would you like to do? Man had in that game 5, I think he was denying someone, and it turned into a switch just because of his activity. It was hilarious to me. This guy is a maniac. He deserves all the credit. And now my mind goes to, honestly, it goes to that sequence in the first quarter. That sequence where Dante Exum hits a pull-up 3, and it's like, hey, this is an unsteady game. Dallas is right there. It's 19-18. Here comes Drew Holiday, screen roll. Hey, Jaylen Brown, nice cut, dunk. Sam Hauser helping recover. Drew Holiday hands it off to him, 3. Luka tries to push. Hey, there's a crowd of 3 people here. Turnover, get a bucket on the other end. Tatum picks PJ Washington. Oh, it's 28-18. Well,
never mind.
And they close the second quarter, and it's like, wow, this got out of hand. And then Peyton Pritchard is like, hey,
again,
yeet.
You can't keep getting away with it.
So it's a big tip cap to the Boston Celtics. I do want to salute the Dallas Mavericks. And I hope we do that.
Yeah. Actually, we can salute the Dallas Mavericks. And I want to circle back to the Finals MVP. if that's cool. Did you want to give your Dallas thoughts first?
Well, I just want to make sure this was a great playoff run from the Dallas Mavericks. They did not win the championship, but the fact that they got there was important. How they got there was important. The teams they beat on that path. To me, they faced the one team that was the toughest matchup for them, because this finals run was built on Luka Doncic's incredible play. And make no mistake, he was incredible during the regular season, during the playoffs. He took whatever he wanted to do and he threw it over the top rope over and over and over again. He made you feel uncomfortable. Him and Kyrie eventually got to a point where your defense didn't feel comfortable with what they were doing. They were able to tap buttons the entire playoff run, except for this series. That's the only thing where Boston just had the personnel where we're not moved. Like, you are going to have to make so many of these. And even at that point, the help is coming off someone we feel comfortable with. And so you couldn't move them that way. Defensively, they were able to put together really great effort to get to the finals, to be able to take an OKC and a Minnesota with those kind of caliber players and force them to just make the same plays over and over again. That's hard. Like, the rotations they made, the effort they gave, they flew around on that end to build that defense into what it was in the playoffs. Very good. Obviously, the additions they made, PJ Washington helped, Daniel Gafford helped, Derek Lively was very good. They showed what it could be. They didn't get the full payoff, but there is a formula here where you have to deal with us. And I just want to make sure they get the credit they deserve.
They beat 350 win teams en route to this final series against, again, a team that was almost the 12th team in NBA history to win 80% of their games. Like, you want to talk about difficult paths. That was Dallas. And having to do so, like, as the lower seed for all of it. And, like, we've talked about the Mavericks throughout the year. Early on in the season, hey, Luka's been incredible. You kind of need everyone else to perk up. They made the mid-season trade, get PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford in. It's like, hey, this could be interesting. They blow OKC out the water. It's like, hey, they could really be interesting if they hit the, they get the right seeding, get the right path, etc. And for them to get the Clippers monkey off their back, like, actually, we're just going to dictate terms here. You're not getting any of the easy stuff. Y'all have fun. To get OKC and basically say, hey, Shay, all of this scoring is really neat. You're only scoring in this area of the floor, though. What are y'all going to do about it? There's going to be size here. The guys that have been knocking down shots all year, I hope you're ready to take 8 threes each to make us move. Couldn't do it. Hey, Minnesota, nice defense you got there. Been really cool. Rudy Gobert and company's been able to establish. Here's Luka Doncic. I don't care what coverage you toss out, actually. I will destroy drop. I will destroy your switches. If you try to blitz, we will just short roll you to death. Or I will string this out long enough to make your help defender, your low defender, make an uncomfortable decision. And now I can just fire in these 98-mile-per-hour fastballs to the rim and get dunks that way. You have fun. Like, watching the Mavericks, and I guess narrowing it down, like watching Luka throughout this season. He's a walking cheat code. And we get to this, get to the postseason, a barely walking cheat code at this point, because he just was not healthy. And for him, at less than 100%, and visibly less than 100%, still walk on the court and have defenses say, we gotta do something. We have to shift what we're doing. To your point, Steve, Boston was the one team that didn't have to push the full-blown shift button, which speaks to the level of personnel that they have and speaks to the belief that they have. But the other three, they all had felt the need to do something differently against Luka because of the way that he could just break your schemes. And this is, again, Minnesota, best defense in the NBA this year. And you look at it, like some of the clean the glass numbers, like one of the best defenses since. Like, they were that good. Oklahoma City, top 5 defense. The Clippers, I think, slid to 13th, I want to say. But for most of the season was a top 10 defense. And Luka's presence alone was enough to bend what they wanted to do. Really impressive run for him. And I'm excited to see like what this offseason does for him. I would imagine he takes some time off, or at least a little bit of a break to try to get healthy. So we'll see if he does Olympic things or not. But beyond that, like, what does he come back with? Is he more refined from the perimeter? Is he more refined as a post scorer? I certainly don't have questions about the passing. That's a terrifying thought. Does he just come in with better shapes, better lateral movements and stuff? Because we saw when fully engaged / healthy, Luka, serviceable defender. We saw it in 2022 when the Mavericks were surprisingly a top 10 defense. Hey, if Luka is in the do your job zone, he can do some stuff. He's big, he's strong. You can't just post him up. If he has his positioning right, like you can't just ISO him and blow by him super easily. We saw that in 2022. We saw that mostly throughout this postseason run. Boston was just able to ding him. Again, different personnel. It's more of a hat tip to Boston than anything else. But again, Luka also wasn't healthy. So you've seen some of the blow by rate stats cited on the broadcast and throughout Twitter and stuff like that. Like, not going to make excuses for what Luka looked like for most of the finals defensively. But we've seen that he can do it. If he's even more consistent on that end next year, what does that look like? Like Luka right now, conservatively, like at absolute worst case, is a top 5 player in the NBA. At worst. He made a strong case throughout this regular season and throughout this postseason to be just number 1. He's probably going to get better. And that is a terrifying thought. Kyrie Irving, what he was able to do as a playmaker and as a defender when his shot wasn't going. And some of the big shots that he was able to make throughout this postseason run when he did have it. Speaks to the level of value that he has. Speaks to the confidence that he has. Speaks to the skill set that he has. What does he come back with next year? Derek Lively, I don't know. I'm so excited about Derek Lively moving forward, man. His ability to switch, his ability to protect the rim, his ability to screen, the slips, him just being a vertical presence, the passing growth that we saw throughout the year. He was never really bad at it, but you could see a significant change from November to March to May with how quickly he was diagnosing short roll opportunities. He sprinkles in a corner 3 in the finals. The sky's the limit for him figuratively and literally. And is watching these different role players pop throughout the season and throughout the postseason. You had your PJ Washington stretch, particularly in that OKC series. You had your Derrick Jones Jr. stretches. You had Dante Exum come off the bench and make big plays on both ends of the floor. Oh, you're leaving me open? I'll just drain these threes. Oh, your defense is tilted? I will puncture you with drives and dump down passes. Jaden Hardy having multiple playoff moments after not being a consistent piece of the regular season rotation. Josh Green oscillated between starting and being a key reserve throughout this year. Is the shot going to be there? Is the aggression going to be there? Competed defensively, added a level of juice to their transition attack that they needed. The screening, him being able to keep the chains moving when defenses were tilted. Like Josh Green showed you positive stuff throughout this postseason run. Mavericks fans should be upset because they lost, but they should be very proud of this group. Like for them to establish the defense that they had, period. Now I just pulled this up very quickly on Cleaning the Glass. So you're going to remove some garbage time from that game 4 and the last, 1 minute and 21 seconds of game 5. A 111 defensive rating in the finals. That's generally enough to win. And this is against a Boston offense that, again, had the best offensive rating in NBA history during the regular season. The offense couldn't get there. Again, Boston dictated terms on that front. Luka, Kyrie couldn't make enough shots. Outside the game 4, the role players didn't make enough shots. They lost the series more with offense than defense, in my opinion. But what a run. And they are set up to do it again next year. You get internal growth. Like Derrick Jones Jr., I think is the major free agency decision. And DJJ, listen to some of the interviews he had during the finals. Like he wants to be back if they can figure out a number. If they could just bring this core back and have a full season with this group now. And if you get any kind of internal improvement from your Josh Greens, your Derek Lively's, your PJ Washington, who is still young, you get a better Luka. What stops Dallas from, at the very least, being in the conference finals again? The West is going to be tough. There are going to be a lot of challengers. We'll do previews in like 3 or 4 months, etc. But like just looking at the group right now, they could absolutely be back here next year. I wouldn't sneeze at that. So we're going to do the Boston thing as we should, but Dallas deserves a lot of props for the run that they made.
They sure do, man. They sure do. Big salute to them. The West is going to be disgusting next year.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Teams getting healthier. I'm sure we're going to see at least a big transaction at some point this offseason that's going to shift the landscape. We will see what it looks like as that news comes in. But heck of a run for Boston. Again, heck of a season. Well, heck of a season for Boston. And again, a heck of a run for Dallas.
I'm trying to think. Is there anything we missed from that closing game? I don't know how Porzingis did that. I wonder how his ankle feels.
Hey, man, he could barely move. He could barely move.
He was giving you the first effort. It was the recovery. Hey, I get to the level, but hey.
Y'all better rotate behind this. I'm not.
I'm in drop, but yeah, that pop is going to be open. I just want you to know that. Like
y'all have to, like watching a drop, they hit the pop. KP is just like, I'm going back here. You rotate up, someone beside me, you go to the corner. I am no, I will be here. I ain't even supposed to be out here. Y'all, hey, navigate that. So KP surely gave it what he had. And I think you pointed out during our watch party last night, recording on a Tuesday morning. But you talked about it during the watch party last night, like the one dunk that he had. Rocking on the rim a little bit, made sure to try to land a little gingerly. He turns around, tries to take off. He couldn't really take off like that. That little hiccup in the engine. I was like, oh, hey, you should just lay that up, big dog.
Hey, the energy was there. Also, Joe Mazzulla with a great bar.
Which one?
Well, that's a good shot by you. But very few chances in life to be great. So, hey, gotta take your moment. Never forget that. Did you have a Finals MVP question, by the way?
Yes. So Jaylen Brown wins it. 11 total votes. Jaylen Brown gets 7 of them. Jason Tatum gets the other 4. Was Jaylen Brown your Finals MVP pick? Well, like if you had a vote, would that have been your pick?
Yes. I think the work that he did, especially during the first 3 games of the Finals, just the consistency he showed with the drives, with the defense, being able to score steadily and shooting well in those first 3 games. We can't let that be forgotten. I think he was on a good streak of like 20 plus points and like 50% shooting until hashtag game 4 and 5 happened. Or game 5, he came out aggressive. I'll put it that way.
he wanted to set the tone.
So I understood that I had probably a lean on Jaylen Brown. Drew Holiday was right up there for me just because his defense was so important and so good, and he had just been so steady. I think the thing for Drew was when he had, I don't forget which game it was, when he had 9 points. I was like, oh, he's probably going to fall out of the race, eh? Like, not his fault, but it's like, hey, I figured it. Tatum's playmaking stood out to me the entire time. Like, I think it's been so valuable for Boston for him to be able to generate offense and help take advantage of the spacing. I know the shooting was a thing, but once the shooting perked up, it was like, hey, he could. There's a world where he could do it, but I kind of stuck with Jaylen Brown. Well, what about you?
I got you. Well, first, quickly, I think game 3 was the one where Drew Holiday had the 9 points. And I think I said on the pod, like, I think he might have just had like the best 9-point performance I had seen.
It was a very good game.
It was a really good game, yeah. And so for me, I start with acknowledging, like, if any 3 of the Jays between Jason, Jaylen, or Drew won it, like, I wouldn't have had any real qualms. So like, I'm not at all upset that Jaylen Brown won or anything like that. With that being said, I ended up tweeting it out. Like, I'm sure it's going to be the minority opinion. Like, I would have went with Drew for Finals MVP. Like, it's funny, not funny. Like, it's interesting thinking about all 3 of their cases, particularly defensively, where Jaylen has the Luka assignment, and that's important for very obvious reasons. Drew Holiday has the Kyrie assignment, which is important for very obvious reasons, and stuff that you detailed in the preview. Like, hey, Kyrie may be the quote-unquote easier body to take away. Since Luka has the size, the blend of the playmaking, and everything like that, like, you can't really just take him off the table. Drew had that assignment. Jason Tatum had the centers, which sounds less important until you consider oh, right, Luka's just the best pick and roll player in the league. And if we could turn this into switches, you can turn the water off of one of the most important, if not the most important facet of Dallas's offense. And thus the entire chain of Luka throws your scheme over the top rope. What are they scheming for? To try to take this away. And so Tatum being able to switch out, that helps take some of that off the table. That helps alleviate some of the strain that Dallas can put on you. But for me, like the work that Drew did against Kyrie, what Drew did as a helper when he was activated in that way, particularly games 3 through 5, where it's just like, hey, actually, if I'm defending a non-shooter, I'm just here. Or this is a one-on-one drive for you, Luka. Oh, there's 4 on the clock. Let me just leave my guy and try to blindside you real quick. I can toss this in. Here's a strip down low as one of your bigs is trying to do some stuff. Like him being able to fly around and dictate so much defensively while also having one of those top tier on-ball assignments. And then on the other end, you mentioned the steadiness. Like that's kind of where I come back to with Drew on the offensive end. It's the steadiness and also the timeliness. Because I think one of the bigger parts of the Jaylen Brown Finals MVP case is not just the scores, but like when he scored. When did he make these plays? When did he make this pull-up jumper? When did he get this drive? When did he get this and one? And with Drew, it just felt like Boston stealing momentum. Let's cap off this 10-2 run. Here's a slot cut from Drew Holiday. Hey, we haven't scored in a minute. Here's a pull-up 3 from Drew Holiday. Hey, this offensive possession didn't go the way we needed to. Here's an offensive rebound from Drew Holiday. And he just consistently made those plays throughout the series. And I think, what was it, game 1 or game 2 where he had the 26 and 11? You mentioned basically a Shaq line in the finals. Like he had games like that. But between the individual scoring, the offensive rebounds, the screening, and what that did against Dallas switching, you saw that pop into game 5. The defensive importance. Like for me, Drew was probably my pick for this series. Now that's while recognizing like Jason and Jaylen are both better players than Drew Holiday is. I think Jason Tatum, even though he didn't win Finals MVP or Eastern Conference Finals MVP, I think Jason Tatum is the best player on this team. Like I don't think what you do in a specific series means you just usurp everything else. But like for me, like I felt like Drew was the most dependable player in the series. And so that's not to say anything about the importance of the drives and the playmaking for Jason Tatum. And again, he had importance on the defensive end as well. Jaylen Brown, again, won the darn thing with his scoring and the role he played defensively. So I'm not mad. But I would have went with Drew if I had an official.
That's fair. Get them bars off, Nekias.
Get the bars up. But no, that's just kind of where I'm at. So either way, like even that speaks to the Celtics. The beauty of their team is that you could have 3 different guys. You're like, you know what? He did the thing. He deserves to be recognized. And they're all on the same team. Like that just kind of speaks to the collective strength that they have. And this is after, like, again, mostly no Kristaps in the series, but the game 1 that he had, we were making the jokes during the watch party, like, hey, wait a minute. If we're doing all this Jaylen versus Jason stuff for the Finals MVP, what if it's just Kristaps? And then gets hurt and all the good stuff. So just a really good basketball team. But Jaylen Brown in the finals, 21 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 58% on twos, didn't shoot well from 3, nearly 2 steals and a block per game during the finals, capping off an impressive playoff run. Just happy for Jaylen Brown. Not going to rehash literally everything I said a little bit earlier, but like the growth that he displayed, all NBA caliber season, all defense caliber season, ultimately didn't make it. And you get Eastern Conference Finals MVP and Finals MVP. What more can you say about Jaylen Brown, like as a concept? He's a 2-way star and he's won. Like again, like there are refinements to the game that can be there. We're going to talk about the basketball, but just like broader strokes. He's a Finals MVP. He's a champion. He's an All NBA performer. He's a multi-time All-Star. Like he's on a Hall of Fame track. What more can you say? It's good stuff. I think we alluded to both, but Kristaps, I think, expected to have off-season surgery. Joe Mazzulla also expected to have. When did Joe Mazzulla get hurt, man? How?
No, he said he tore his meniscus.
I just
doing Joe Mazzulla things.
Like I know it didn't happen here, but like, hey, you remember that? Which regular season game was it? where some team had called a timeout. Player was like taking a shot after the timeout, and Joe Mazzulla just slides on the court to try to contest the shot. Like, I know that isn't when it happened, but like, dog, as you mentioned Joe Mazzulla things, that just popped up in my head. Any closing thoughts on Celtics, Mavs, the finals, or that's what I wanted to ask you before we get out of here. As the NBA season, the 2023-24 season is officially over, like we're about to transition into a whole bunch of draft and transaction things. So like the NBA, we're certainly not done talking NBA on the pod. But like you roam in social and like, I guess one, that's kind of the interesting / annoying part of the quote unquote job for us. To where like you kind of have to be online at least to some degree to understand like what the pulse is and what people are talking about, whether you agree or disagree with what they're talking about. It's important to have just the general knowledge of what's going on there. But like seeing and hearing some of the sentiments of what this postseason and what this NBA season was in terms of the overall enjoyment level, I was thinking about that this morning. 'Cause I think for me and I think for us, if I can quickly speak for both of us, I think it's very clear to say that we found a lot of enjoyment with this season and with this postseason. And we had something to talk about every week and every day when you factor in the watch parties. And I'm just trying to balance like my own personal enjoyment of this postseason run. Like I enjoyed the Eastern Conference playoffs this year. The results were Boston wins in 5 and everything like that. But like game by game, watching the chess matches within those games, like I had a lot of fun. And so I'm like trying to balance that thought with this narrative bubbling up that Boston didn't really face any challenges or this wasn't enjoyable to watch because they breezed through, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wonder, like zooming out, what can be done with that kind of sentiment. Not that people are wrong, but like in general, like I guess like how to go about shifting that.
Watch the games, do the work, tell the stories. People are going to think whatever they want. And, if it's a chamber of people who want to say things, they can say things. But the beauty of the playoffs is it's the payoff to the regular season. And if you pay attention, you watch these teams, you understand what they're good at, what they're not good at. I'm always going to enjoy the playoffs because you're going to understand what a team is trying to accomplish and what a team is trying to take away from them. You're going to see that mini battle and you're going to see it play out. That's the fun for me. So give me the Knicks Sixers series where it's back and forth. We talk about adjustments, but hey, you got to highlight what is a team trying to do? What is the other team trying to take away? How did they win? What's their path to victory? And in every series you get there. So I will always find the joy, even in like an OKC New Orleans series. Okay, can New Orleans get there? They could. Oh no, they can't. They don't have a path anymore. OKC is taking that away. So when you have that give and take, and you should have the natural buildup as matchups change and series change, and you have to face different elements. It's hard to win in the playoffs. I mean, what is the 6th year we've had a different champion?
Yeah.
That's the joy. You get upsets. You get to explain why something worked. You get questions. It's a fact of how good are you at explaining what people are seeing to add a layer to whatever they think. And so for me, I love basketball, so I don't subscribe to that, even if it was a 5-game series. Okay, that's pretty dramatic because Minnesota was uncomfortable because of this, which is different than the last series where they did this, and that. Like I can find the joy no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I got you there. Like I was just thinking, like as someone in the in the content creation space, etc. It's just like, like I feel like we do a pretty good job of breaking down what's happening and why this stuff matters. And to your point of finding the joy, like one of the things that I love about this podcast and have loved since the thing started is that we can literally talk about our joy anywhere. Like this is not a podcast that will just talk about Lakers, Celtics, Sixers, insert glamour team here. We will go 15 minutes or I will go 10 to 15 minutes on the Charlotte Hornets. I will not put that on you.
All right, man.
I know you can't. Right. I won't put that on you. But like, my overall point is like, we both love basketball, and we both can find not even just fine, because it feels like you're trying to search for something. Like there are just things within basketball that just grab us, and we're able to do that. And so for me, it's less like, oh, if you didn't like this postseason, you don't like basketball, etc. It's like it was more so me kind of evaluating, hey, have I done enough / done a good enough job of like spreading my joy to have some kind of impact so that people have more things to think about, more things to look at, and thus like more things that could grab them
Why
to
you
kind
why
of ease
you
this kind of sentiment.
why are you overthinking? Some people
I'm
just
not even
don't.
overthinking.
Some people just don't want to be happy.
Uh, well, when you put it like that, and to be clear, like this isn't I think I'm doing a bad job or anything like that. It was just like I wonder what impact or more impact I could have on that front. Not that I'm doing anything wrong or bad or anything like that. It's just like, I don't like seeing the sentiment. Like I disagree with it. I don't think everyone that has that sentiment is a bad basketball fan or anything like that. So it's like, okay, is there more that I can do to kind of bridge that gap? So that even in, a postseason run for Boston, where again, like a lot of 5-game series, you can find the fun in the chess match that we saw in Celtics Pacers. Even if you never felt like, without Tyrese Halliburton, the Pacers are going to win the thing. Can you find the joy in this chess match here? With Heat Celtics, no Jimmy. I think we both predicted Boston's going to win that series, and they largely did. Can you find the joy in what Miami's trying to do? Can you find the joy in this specific area of what Miami is doing on either end of the floor? And does that just flow into, the other games that you're watching? I think a lot of fans they're watching for their favorite player or their favorite team, as opposed to us, where we're watching everyone because we love hoop. And so I was just thinking about that this morning.
There's a key word you just said, two words you said that are very important. Favorite player, favorite team. So for those that do that, probably can't see the joy unless it's their favorite player and their favorite team doing it. And that's been a shift. But you do the work, you tell the story. When you have a preview that leads into a series and you can point back to it, and then you talk about the series, you can point to that throughout the series. I think it's pretty enjoyable stuff.
There we go. All righty then. If you don't have any closing thoughts on the series or the season at large, we can go into the news section. Talked about Jaylen Brown. We talked about Mazzulla and Kristaps having, I guess, a healthy leg between them at this point. Teams are now allowed to negotiate with their own free agents or agree to rookie or veteran extensions now. The actual free agency period or being able to agree with outside deals, you're going to be waiting till June 30th for that, but don't be surprised if we see some re-signings trickle in. I would imagine Jason Tatum is going to be getting his max extension soon and very soon. I think it's 4 years over 300 mil or 5 years over 300 mil, somewhere in that range. So whenever that happens, because I don't imagine a world in which that doesn't, we'll talk about that. Will be well deserved. And then on the coaching front, Jeff Van Gundy becoming the lead assistant on Ty Lue's staff with the Los Angeles Clippers. Did not have this on the bingo card, though the two do have prior history. They've done Team USA stuff together. Jeff Van Gundy coached Ty Lue in 2004 as a Rocket. Just just early thoughts on Jeff Van Gundy joining the Clipper staff?
Great basketball mind's going to help them. Obviously, he was a consultant for the Celtics, helped them out, but very, very, very good move for the Clippers as they continue to try and figure out how to get to that next level.
It's good stuff. And I think that move coming after, I want to say Dan Craig, who's the lead assistant the Clippers, joined Billy Donovan's staff in Chicago. And so replacing it with Jeff Van Gundy and all the head coaching experience he has, like that's it's pretty darn good stuff. So I'm intrigued. Ty Lue building out a staff. On the W front, the Aces waiving veteran Emma Cannon, signing Jessica Carter. In her steed, Carter was a second-round pick of this year's draft for the New York Liberty. I am intrigued by this move, period. Again, Emma Vet played for the Indiana Fever last year, didn't get much playing time with the Aces this year. So I wonder how much of that is a courtesy call for her, recognizing, hey, there may be other places you can play. We want to let you sign somewhere else, versus what the Aces see in Carter. Because the Aces did draft Angel Jackson in this year's draft. Ultimately didn't make the roster, but that was a sizable center there. So I'm curious to see if they have an actual playing role for Carter, or if this is just let's get a look at another young player and see what's happening there. That's pretty much all I had on that front. But beyond the news, we want to check in on the top half of the W. Check in on the top 6. We have a contending class. We have, in regards to the Ace in particular, a contender that hasn't been playing at a contending level so far this year. But one check in on the top six of the standings, tipping that off, with the Connecticut Sun, who are 12-1 right now. Their lone loss coming via the New York Liberty, who we'll talk about a little bit later. The Sun are fourth in offensive rating. They are first in defensive rating, with a little bit of a gap there. They've largely looked like they've been the best defense in the league all year, and that's kind of where it starts for me. Being able to get the ball pressure that you're getting from Dejanay Carrington, being able to mix in her screen navigation, the assignments that she's taking on and taking out of the equation, the list has been growing throughout the year. Alyssa Thomas, if I had to vote right now, would just be my defensive player of the year, as she was last year. Well, if I had an official awards ballot, she would have been my defensive player of the year last year. But either way, she's been spearheading this elite defense with her aggression, her ability to play higher up in ball screens, her ability to stonewall post ups, her ability to defend drives, her ability to read things off the ball, period. She processes the floor very quickly, and you see that on the other end as she's operating as a hub for the Sun, flowing into handoffs, finding cutters, just being able to reverse the floor to keep Connecticut's flow up has been impressive. Again, fourth in offensive rating so far this year. I guess my only question for the Sun moving forward, as just an early check-in, I just continue to keep my eyes on the guard room, period. Especially with the new additions. Like, we haven't had the consistent run of Rachel Banham knocking down shots yet. So I think that will come. Tiffany Mitchell got off to a slow start, but you've seen over this recent stretch just how impactful her drives can be and how impactful the defense can be. Mariah Jefferson's been in and out of the lineup. We know how important her drives and her ball pressure can be when she's on the floor. And again, with Dejanay Carrington, I guess like more wing than guard. Her being more consistent on both ends of the floor has taken the Sun team to a new level. I think she's going to factor heavily into the most improved player conversation, as she should. We've seen the drives look better. We've seen her make quicker decisions with the ball, period, both as a driver and as someone that can just make the basic read if someone helps. And the defense has popped all year. Like, I think she's defended at an all defense level. And so just kind of monitoring what the consistency looks like from that guard/wing room is kind of going to be the biggest thing for me with the Sun group, because otherwise they defend their tails off. AT directs the show on both ends of the floor. DeWanna Bonner, who still largely hasn't had the real 3-point boom, but DeWanna Bonner, her mix of shot making and her drives have popped all year. And she's been a strong switchable defender this season. Bree Jones looking more and more comfortable as the year goes on. Like, one of my super early thoughts this regular season was, hey, what's this going to look like defensively? Because they're having her at the level 2, and teams have been able to kind of split some of those when she's giving space, or been able to drive past some of those. And now you're forcing the back line to rotate behind that, which with this Sun group, that isn't much of a problem for them, but you ultimately don't want to be in that position. But she's looking more comfortable defensively. She remains a monster on the offensive glass. If you put anyone small on her, she's just putting them underneath the basket on post-ups. So you can absolutely see the skeleton of elite team on both ends of the floor for Connecticut. It's been a lot of fun, but I am just keeping an eye on the guard room right now. What have been your early impressions of the Sun? Where are you at with them right now?
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense when you talk about the guard room because of how important the guard play is to the Connecticut Sun. Being able to space the floor, knock down shots when needed, defend at a high level. They know exactly what they need from their guard room. And the nights when the production isn't there offensively, you can feel the weight a little bit more because, again, this is a team that flows from side to side. They can mix in different actions. Obviously, cross screens for Bree Jones, get the handoffs from AT, DeWanna Bonner operating, but they always are comfortable grinding in the half court. The issue becomes, do you get the payoff? Our team's able to slide under, and now we contain some of the penetration and drives. And now you're deeper in the clock in a way you don't necessarily want to? Or are you in the scenarios where, hey, we're going to get to our next option. We're going to flow into the next thing, and we feel comfortable putting you in a tough spot in the half court. That's one thing that stood out for the Sun. They're comfortable rolling around in the mud. It's just on you as a defense to flip that on them. But I think the defense really stands out. I mean, when you watch the Connecticut Sun, you got to look at the activity. You have to look at how physical they are. When you are looking to cut, watch, kind of space your eyes out a little bit and watch when a team tries to go to movement, watch the orange jerseys and what they do. Obviously if they're on the road, watch that movement, watch the help they show, look at the stunts they have. When they put 2 on the ball, look what they look at how they react. Watch Dejanay Carrington fly around. Like that puts so much pressure on you because you can be in a game with Connecticut. You can be right there. Hey, we got them right where we want them. Their offense isn't flowing as well. They're missing shots. And then their defense just says, hey, you're not scoring. And all of a sudden they've gone on like an 8-0 run, but it's over like 3 minutes. And that's now
that's slow build.
Now you're down by 12 or something like that. And so I think that's been very impressive. But I think Dejanay Carrington be able to play at this high level. DeWanna Bonner has, the shot hasn't been at the highest of levels, but it has not stopped the attempts. And you see the impact of when they are made. As Rachel Bandham goes along, as Ty Harris keeps making shots, I think you'll see the Sun continue to grow. But if that defense is going to be this, they're going to compete all year.
Actually, on the defense front, a question I have for you in regards to their switching, because I feel like they can do that relatively easily. I think something that kind of popped sporadically throughout the year last year was teams recognizing, hey, AT may not blitz these. Can we force her to switch? Can we move this player to the strong side corner? Can we just move AT out the way? Can we keep her higher on the floor? Can we now play 4-on-4 elsewhere? Has any of that popped for you so far this year?
Well, I think one of the differences is having Bree Jones back means AT is naturally just going to be doing more of the weak side stuff. And if it's AT and DeWanna Bonner rotating, that's not fun for an offense to deal with. So even if you try and stash AT, she's really good at rotating and reading the room. So it's very hard to consistently get her on I'm supposed to stay here. Like they are very active in that sense. And because of the way their guards navigate screens, it's not fun necessarily. Mm-hmm. So I think the fact that their bigs have held up defensively has helped them not have to solely rely on this. We can mix things up. We can blitz with Bree Jones. We can do different things.
Mm-hmm. And then just very quickly to the blitz point per second spectrum, Connecticut blitzing pick and rolls at the second highest rate in the league. Only team that blitzes more is another team we're going to talk about a little bit later, the Seattle Storm. As they've continued to ramp things up with their front court. It's been a very fun one to watch. But any closing thoughts or questions about the Sun?
I mean, they're just going to keep grinding. It's just, can the offense stay at this high of a level? What is their rough patch going to look like? How do they overcome the days when maybe the shots aren't falling?
Mm-hmm. It's going to be an interesting one. I think we get Sun Aces on Friday. Their first meeting of the year, a rematch of the 2022 W Finals. I'm intrigued to see what that one looks like, especially with them pretty much being on opposite ends of the spectrum right now in terms of recent play. Sun on the winning streak, the Aces very much not, but we'll talk about the Aces a little bit later. Let's talk about the New York Liberty. Sun are 12-1, the Liberty 12-2. They have the longest win streak in the W. They are playing at the highest level of any team in the league right now. They're first in offense, they're fourth in defense. Let me say, start here. Jonquel Jones looks really freaking good right now. Her ability to put strain on your defense on all three levels of the floor is not new. Like, she is a former MVP winner, but it's such a shift from what we saw early in the season last year as she was just working her way back from injury. So you didn't really get the full breadth of how many ways JJ can be used as a pressure point until really the second half of the year. And she just kind of come out the gate with, you cannot guard me. On these post-ups, I am putting you underneath the basket. In pick and roll, you don't know if I'm rolling or if I'm slipping. You don't know if I'm rolling or if I'm popping out. And if I do pop out, you don't know if I'm going to second side or if I'm just taking this shot. Her being able to bomb away threes, I think, puts an extra layer of strain on defenses. And something that popped in the Aces game in particular on Saturday, JJ's also just been screening her tail off. She has really bought in when the play isn't being run for her. She has really bought into doing these little things. She's really done a good job of getting firm contact on the screen and holding the screen to give her guards, whether that's Sabrina, if that's Benijah when she's running the action, whether that's Ivana Dojkic. She's really done a great job of giving the guards an extra beat, helping them get a little bit more space. That's opening up pull-up attempts. For Sabrina, that's opening up even more of the drives for her as we've talked about on the show multiple times at this point. Her growth inside the arc and her growth as a driver overall has really popped so far this season. And watching the Sabrina JJ pick and roll in particular has been fun to watch, and I would imagine similarly infuriating to defend if you're on the opposite side of that. And again, going back to the game on Saturday against the Aces, in the second half, it is just empty side, Sabrina JJ. Let's see what you do. Oh, your help is not in. This is going to be 2-on-2. JJ is setting a firm screen. Sabrina is open. Help is coming from somewhere. There's the roll to Jonquel. Oh, you defended this part. Y'all switched it. Cool. We're just going to circle around. Now it's a smaller player defending Jonquel Jones. You're not going to have fun with this. And so just watching that partnership grow has been a lot of fun. Again, Sabrina hasn't shot as well from deep as she did last year, but I think you take that while recognizing, one, the shot is going to bounce back. Two, we're seeing this kind of interior growth. We're seeing this kind of maybe not playmaking growth, but just in terms of how to run the offense, just her overall pacing when she's running things has improved as well. We're talking about this, what Benijah Delaney's been able to do on both ends of the floor. She's mixing in the drives, the post-ups, the closeout attacks, again, running some of the offense as Courtney Vandersloot's been out. So she's kind of been de facto backup point guard sometimes. The fact that all these things can be said in a positive light before bringing up Breanna Stewart just being really good defensively, not shooting well from three at all, but dominating with some of these quick seals and some of these post-ups, the mid-range jumper bouncing back for her. The Liberty are just a terrifying basketball team right now.
They're playing at a high level. I think it's just a build-up based on the growth from last year and that experience helping them. It's easy to forget. Like, they lost 2 games in a row. They lost to this guy, they lost to the Lynx, they haven't lost since. And so I think what you're seeing is the payoff where this is a team that knows what they want to get to and has more abilities to do it on both ends of the floor. I think that's been the biggest thing for me. Jonquel being able to play at this high of a level just gives you such a different element. But I think when you watch him, the defense is what has stood out to me as far as we have a little bit more versatility in what we want to do. We can flip matchups. We can mix in switching. We can keep the ball in front. We can put more of these lineups where we feel comfortable having 2 wings who can guard perimeter players. We have size, we can have length, and we can have Phoebus or Thornton go out there and play, Burke go out there and play and give us what we need as far as keeping that versatility on the floor instead of, okay, hopefully our bigs can save us. Hopefully we can keep the ball in front. So that's kind of popped. You felt that especially in that Aces game where, okay, there's a little bit more of an identity to where we can stay at home on some of these issues and keep the ball in front. But I think Sabrina's drives have been key. Being able to comfortably turn the corner, mix in the scoring, but also if I can drive and attack, that's going to force the defense to help. And with the way the floor is spaced, that's going to open things up. I think they have more of a purpose offensively this season. Or at least they've been able to display knowing what we want to get to and being able to get to that consistently as teams are physical against the movement or as teams were to defend the pick and roll. I think that's been a plus for the Liberty. And so they've kept building. And, when you have a week when you beat the Connecticut Sun, you beat the Aces both on the road, kind of shows a little bit of the payoff.
Yeah, that's pretty big. That's pretty big. Mentioned the Sabrina shooting, a shade under 35% from three so far this year, after shooting nearly 45% last year. But during this 8-game win streak, Sabrina Ionescu, 40.7% on threes on nearly 7 attempts. It's coming back, which is going to make everything she does on and off the ball even more deadly. Averaging 19 and 7 during this 8-game win streak for the New York Liberty. Jonquel Jones, 19 points, 9 rebounds, 46% from three on over 5 attempts, nearly 63% from the field overall. That seems pretty good. And something that was sprinkled in on the pod and on my own timeline, as they've leaned more, most so because of like injuries / absence, but as they've leaned more into point Sabrina, here's Sabrina Ionescu, here are these 3 really rangy wings or forwards, and then here's Jonquel. The Liberty have just blitz teams in those minutes. So far this year, a plus 14 net rating in 242 minutes with Sabrina on the floor without another point guard, so no Courtney Vandersloot, who remains out, no Ivona Dojkic on the floor. Plus 65 in 242 minutes. Seems pretty darn good. And when you go Sabrina, Benijah, Kayla Thornton, Breanna Stewart, Jonquel Jones, you're pretty much setting the court on fire. What's been able to do? Elite defensively, elite offensively. And to your point, just the general purpose that they have, like they can just flow into so many different things. Like you can just post up John Quill, you can go into post splits, you can run off ball stuff for Sabrina, you can go into any variation of pick and roll with Sabrina running things. You can invert things with Sabrina screening for Stewie. Yeah, Benijah Laney, you could just post her up. They run split game through some of the Benijah post ups as well. Like there's just a level of versatility that the Liberty have, and to your point, a level of purpose that they have to where we can run this. If it doesn't work, we know we're going to this on the second side of the floor. Or if teams are defending this pet action one way, we know we can get to the secondary option out of the same play. And so instead of looking for the three up top, we can now just split. Like there was a play they ran against the Aces, ran it once in the first half, ran it another time in the third quarter, where it's just a post up for Benijah Laney. On the first one, Sabrina fakes like she's going to set a screen for John Quelch, just lifts up, gets a three out of it. Later in the game, they're looking to run that again. The Aces are keyed in on it. Benijah Laney just backing down Kelsey Plum, Kate Martin on the opposite side of the floor. Like, ooh, I need to send help. It's a three. It's a skip to Leonie Fevich in the opposite corner, wide open three. It's like, well, if JJ's an option, if Sabrina's an option, if Benijah's a pressure point because she can just post up smaller guards, you're sending help off of a 6'4" player that is known for knocking down shots internationally. You're not having fun. And again, when mentioning that, not even talking about Brianna Stewart, who was just also on the floor during that time. So it's just like they can just put pressure on you in abundance of ways. And again, when you're beefing up the size defensively, whether they want to play more conservatively in a drop and show help in the gaps, if they want to switch and then scram players out. We talked a lot about the scram switch with New York last season in particular, getting Sabrina out of there. If they want to ramp things up with John Quell at the level or Stewie at the level, you still have a level of size behind that. They just look really good right now. They look really, really good right now. Any closing thoughts or questions on the Liberty? Okay. Shout out to the Liberty. Currently third in the standings, heading into Tuesday's action, coming off of a win against what's left of the Dallas Wings, rather. The Minnesota Lynx, 11-3 right now, second in offense and in defense. This has been one of the more fun teams to watch for me. As a sucker for inverted offense, your guards are screening on and off the ball. Let's see what defenses do about it. As a general fan of ball movement, Minnesota checks those boxes for me. I think the Courtney Williams fit has been a seamless one so far, what she's been able to do in pick and roll, how she aids the Lynx in rebounding, which was a huge problem for them last year, not so much this year. She's been able to help with the rebounding. I think the pick and roll play has been important. Her ability to mix in these mid-range pull-ups, and I'm sure she's happy about mixing in those mid-range shots at a level that she wasn't able to in Chicago last year. They had kind of the, hey, how about you take a step back this year for James Wade? So her going back to the mid-range floors has been fun. Her and Alana Smith have carried over their chemistry from the Chicago days. They've looked really good together. Alana's just been filling all kinds of gaps. She's been one of the best screeners in the W. Her ability to roll and pop has been valuable. She's been shooting the leather off the ball. This Lynx team as a whole has been shooting the leather off the ball this year. So that's been a lot of fun. And you can't talk about shooting the leather off the ball without talking about Kayla McBride, who is legitimately having one of the greatest shooting seasons in basketball history, honestly, from deep. Kayla McBride, 14 games played, 7.1 attempts from behind the arc. She is converting 49.5% of her threes this year. And this is not just Kayla McBride standing weak side corner and Nafisa Collier draws two. Here's a wide open catch and shoot jumper. Kayla McBride is one of the most active movers in DW. And as I talked a little bit about the way that they invert actions, Kayla McBride will set an on-ball screen from Nafisa Collier, then pop out and then shoot off movement. Kayla McBride will be a part of some kind of off-ball action, screen for someone else, then pop off to the other side and shoot off movement. Like, these are not just easy shots that Kayla McBride is getting. And this is with her taking on tough defensive assignments on the other end as well. So for her, the level of stamina it takes to have the kind of season that Kayla McBride is having, she get the hat tip for one. But on top of that, just insane efficiency. Currently flirting with the career high in scoring, shade over 17 points per game. But the three-point shooting has been immensely valuable. And naturally, like, the MVP candidate is just Nafisa Collier. One of the most versatile scorers in the sport. Can sprinkle in threes to kind of break the backs of the defense, but ultimately what she does as a driver, what she does on post-ups, what she does on face-ups, the high release points allow her to shoot over even like-sized defenders because of how high she gets the ball up. You add in the playmaking there, her ability to screen. She's just a very versatile offensive threat. And on the other end of the floor, she has just been all over the place. She just had an 8 steal game, which we know steals aren't always just a marker of good defense, but Fee has legitimately been everywhere. She's been switchable, and if you were throwing the ball near her or if you were driving near her, very liable to make something happen. And so this has been, again, a versatile group, an inverted group, a rangy group, and ultimately a fun group for me.
No, but hey, if you wanna watch a really good basketball team do fun things on both ends of the floor, the Minnesota Lynx are for you. Just their flow, the way they get from option to option has been impressive all year. Obviously, one of the highest assist rates in the WNBA because of the way that they play together and the way they move the ball from side to side, and you never know exactly what's going to hit you because it might be a dribble handoff, it might be a pass as someone flashes in the back cut. Might be Caleb Bright flying off screens. They just put so much pressure on you, and that's been really fun. And I think no bigger compliment than, hey, Bridget Carlton not playing against Dallas. Dorka, you are also starting with Nafisa Collier and Alana Smith, and we're just going to make that work because that's just what we do because we have consistency with our players who can space the floor and do what we want. And so that's where I was like, hey, this is a team that really works. And then I think the activity on defense, the way they work, the rotations when they get beat on drives, the team effort. It's just been a really, really solid base that they've continued to build on. And, everyone's shooting the ball well. But I think you see the shift when Bridget Carlton's taking threes, shooting threes. When Dorka continues to move the ball, they just have a consistency on both ends of the floor that you can build on throughout the year.
Yeah, like just their front court being as skilled as it is such a luxury. Like the fact that you could just slide Alana into the de facto three and not feel bad about it because of how good she is defensively, because of how she's able to stretch the floor. And ultimately, like you can put the ball in anyone's hands and feel pretty good about it. Like Alana can act as a handoff hub if necessary. We know what Nafisa Collier can do. Dorka had a really solid rookie campaign last year. Dorka being able to mix in some of the hub stuff, some of the more traditional pick and roll things, and also, hey, I will just take threes if you leave me open. Like that's just a really fun dichotomy there. I'm excited to see like how they grow off of that. Also, quick correction on my front as I was just reading things wrong. The Lynx still remain a bad rebounding team. So I did want to self-correct on that front. But Courtney Williams remains a good individual rebounder. But overall, Lynx still have to figure out some stuff with the rebounding. And I guess in general, that kind of leads me to a question that I have on the Lynx front. Like, I don't think it mattered too much last night, just because Dallas is missing a little bit of everyone. But I think part of the versatility that Minnesota has, particularly in the front court, is because they don't have like your traditional bulky 6'5" center that just holds in the middle of the paint. Do you worry about the Lynx against size at all as you like project them forward in the postseason?
Do I worry about the Lynx against size? I mean, in the sense that they can make things tough, yes. I'm more worried about the Lynx against teams that can switch or feel comfortable with unders and can sustain defense. That's more my concern.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. And as you mentioned, we both talked about the ball move, but as you mentioned, the assist rate, we're looking at 3 years in a row, I believe. So we may have a W record in assist rate. In 22, that was the Chicago Sky at 74.3. Last year, the New York Liberty assisted on 75% of their made baskets. And so far this year, the Minnesota Lynx assisting on nearly 79% of their made baskets. The ball is popping. So again, a very fun group. We will see what the Lynx have in store for us moving forward. We can now shift to the Seattle Storm, 9-5 heading into Tuesday's action, fifth in offense, third in defense. Naturally, defense being better than the offense right now is kind of where it starts for me. As we have seen Skylar, not quite all defense level, but you're starting to see her return more to form with her pressuring the ball. I think Jewel Lloyd has been relatively locked in on that side of the ball. Being able to get the versatility that you're getting for Jordan Horston off the bench. Victoria Vivian's competing and taking on tough assignments with that starting group. But man, the front court is filthy. Like, Neko Gumake has long been one of the best defenders in the W. She was a big reason, if not the biggest reason, why the Sparks had the best defense in the W post All-Star break last year. Her and Jordan Canada just wreaked havoc. And you're you have just seen the value that NECA adds as a help defender, as a post defender, even when she's the smaller player of the dynamic. Her being able to battle on the post. When they do ramp things up, mentioned a little bit earlier, Seattle blitzes pick and rolls at the highest rate in the league. She's really good at closing off space and getting deflections when she's up top. And so Seattle just brings a level of havoc. And then behind that is Ezzy Madbagor, who all defense team last year. I think it's safe to say she's going to be on one this year, if not just the first team, as she has been incredible. One of the best shot blockers in the league. Her ability to switch continues to pop. When they do want her to be more aggressive in pick and roll, she can certainly do that. Her length causes problems for opposing ball handlers. She's gotten a little bit stronger, dealing with post-ups better. When Seattle's at their best, they just feel impenetrable. Like, have fun against the Skylar Diggins-Smith ball pressure and just her quick hands. Have fun against Jewel Lloyd. May not have the same quick hands as Skylar, but is pretty darn strong. So have fun with that. You're dealing with NECA. You're dealing with Ezzy. It just becomes like, where are we getting shots from? What are we creating? We are technically getting two on the ball here, but the way that they are rotating and pre-rotating the stuff, we're not getting the same gaps that we think we have. And that defense being able to fuel their offense has been a lot of fun. And something that you've talked about throughout the years, just the overall flow that Seattle's trying to tap into. Or anyone can receive a handoff. Anyone can receive a ball screen. They do a really good job of flowing side to side. And as you've seen the shots start to fall a little bit more for Skylar and for Jewel compared to where it was earlier in the year, you're starting to see the vision of what this team can look like. A team that can put pressure on you, multiple areas of the floor, will drive all over you, as Jewel and Skylar towards the top of the leaderboard and drives per game and just total drives this year. We're going to put consistent pressure on the rim. If you want to switch against us, we will punish you on the block. And if they get enough shooting from the perimeter, whether it's from their stars or from some of the role players, your Sammy Whitcombs, your Victoria Vivians, Jordan Horse is going to be left open if she knocks down enough corner threes. If they can supplement the interior game enough with the outside shooting, like, they have as good a chance as anyone to win the title this year. Like, they have that kind of potential.
Well, I think one of the key things you said there was the vision. And they haven't hit it all the time, but we've seen them hit it. And I think that's where it's like, okay, do we really want to deal with this team in a playoff context? To where you mentioned the defense, the front court, and their versatility, not necessarily fun to deal with. The activity of the guards, not fun to deal with. So as you kind of match them up mentally against some of these quote unquote other top teams in this mix, it's like, well, hey, they can kind of handle some of this dribble penetration, or they can feel comfortable staying on an island against some of these post ups. I think the biggest thing is just continuing to monitor the growth of the flow offensively. I've liked a lot of what they've tried to do, especially when you mix and match your talent together, using Jewel Lloyd and Skylar Diggins-Smith together, being able to go into a flow for NECA or Ezzy. The issue becomes, okay, what happens if the first option is taken away? How do we deal with teams when they're active against our offense? What do we do when our defense is getting dinged? And while we're blitzing, they're hitting our rotations. It's kind of them working through that, which is natural. I mean, this is year one of this version of the Storm. But that's kind of the one thing that they've kind of got to figure out through the course of the season to kind of put themselves up there. They're in a good spot. I mean, to be 9-5 in year one is a plus. But that's kind of, for me, the consistency you want to get to, because they can get a little slow. And when you are kind of learning each other, you don't necessarily have the counters automatically in. You know, I always compare it to like the Liberty from last year as far as the start goes, where, hey, this could be something, but we don't necessarily know what it is. So I think it's one of those times where this is a good stretch for Seattle to continue to compete, continue to build. But now you got to figure out, okay, how do we handle when, you know, our guards aren't necessarily scoring in a certain fashion? What does that do to our overall offense? But I think that will come with time.
Okay, I got you. Quick question for you. So, you know, the core four for Seattle: Skylar Diggins-Smith, Jewel Lloyd, Neko Gumake, Ezzy Madbagor. Who do you think is their best fifth right now?
Who do I think is their best fifth?
Yeah. Like, it's matchup dependent, but like, who do you feel most comfortable with?
I mean, I think the ideal is Jordan Horston because of what she can bring on both ends of the floor. But I think you kind of need to find multiple ones to a degree to where we feel comfortable with the Vivian's minutes. and we're getting that defense and knocking down shots. We feel comfortable if it's Sammy Whitcomb to continue the spacing. So I probably go Horston, but I like the fit with Vivian's just because this is your role. You got to do that. That's all we got to worry about.
Got you. Like, I think ideally, like Vivian's, I think I've said this on the pod before, but like I think ideally Vivian's is kind of the midpoint of the shooting you get from Sammy Whitcomb and size versatility that you get from Jordan Horston. Like, I think ideally you get the midpoint there, and then you can go to either extreme as you get into the second half of games. Okay, we really need defense right now, which again, Jordan Horston has just been a lot of fun on that end this year and had some really fun flashes last season during the rookie campaign. But if we want to really size up and really defend and guard our yard, we can go with Jordan. If we really need the shooting because we're down or we're having success, we want to continue to space this out to the maximum capacity, we can go with Sammy Whitcomb. Pull this up very quickly, just looking at the core 4 minutes. Like one, just with, again, Skylar, Jewel, Nneka, Ezzy on the floor together. A plus 51 in 228 minutes. That's pretty darn good. But with Victoria and Vivian's on the floor, the Storm are a plus 25 in 138 minutes. With Jordan Horston as the fifth, they are a plus 4 in 69 minutes. And with Sammy Whitcomb on the floor, they are a plus 22 in 21 minutes. So interesting minutes gap as you think about these three. But the Storm are, most importantly, they're winning all of those minutes, regardless of who the fifth is. And that's ultimately where you want to get to. To your point, making sure that we have multiple avenues that we can go to and feel comfortable with. So quick salute to the Storm there. We can move now to the Phoenix Mercury, now sliding up to fifth in the standings, 7-7 right now. They're sixth in offense, they're eighth in defense. But even that feels a little fake considering they just got Brittany Griner back. And quick fact on that front, with Natasha Cloud, Diana Taurasi, Kalia Copper, and Brittany Griner on the floor together, it's only been 67 minutes, excuse me. They have won those 67 minutes by 29 points. They have a plus 20.4 net rating in those minutes. I think it's safe to say when you have, again, going with core fours, when we have our four best players on the floor, and whether that's Beck Allen closing in as the fifth, whether that's Sophie Cunningham as the fifth, whether that's Shug Sutton if we want a little bit more ball handling in as the fifth. When we have these four on the floor, we feel pretty darn good about what we can get on both ends. And I think what's popped for me, I did a thread on it yesterday. Again, recording on a Tuesday morning. I did a thread on it yesterday. Like how seamless the entry for Brittany Griner has been as she's made her season debut. I think 21 minutes in the first game. She's played 30 plus minutes in the last three. And she is scoring super efficiently, setting a whole lot of screens, and they're also making sure that she get her post touches on top of that. Like Phoenix being able to establish early on, we don't have BG. We're going to space the floor. We're going to set a whole bunch of ghost screens. We're going to make sure the floor is spread. We're going to drive. We're going to cut. We're going to put strain on your defense from the outside in. Getting Brittany Griner back and still saying we're still running a whole bunch of this pick and roll stuff. Like we're still running a lot of perimeter based things. We're still running a whole bunch of Spain. We still want to go outside in. But with that, if we don't get an initial crack on the outside, we now have Brittany Griner as the second layer of our offense. Which, frankly, she's overqualified to be a second layer of an offense. But at its peak, what do you do if that's the second thing you have to worry about? Hey, they are running Spain pick and roll with Kalia Copper as the ball handler. She can get downhill against anyone. Diana Taurasi is setting the back screen. Brittany Griner is setting the initial screen. How do we account for a Kalia Copper drive, DT slipping out, and just Brittany Griner rolling down the middle of the paint? Hey, let's switch this. Oh no, we have a small player on Brittany Griner. We have to help. Oh no, that is a wide open three for the Phoenix Mercury, as Nate Tibbetts has been very intentional about making sure that team gets a whole bunch of threes up. And so watching BG just kind of slide in, again, overqualified for the second wave role, but just kind of being the second wave of this kind of offense with this kind of spacing, with this kind of movement, with this kind of cutting, with the random screening on top of that. It's been a lot of fun to watch. I know I've said fun a lot, but like I've really enjoyed watching this Phoenix team. And like even watching their recent matchup against the Storm, and you're seeing Seattle, again, elite defense, a lot of personnel, especially when they have Jordan Horston in as your three. Okay, we can switch a whole bunch of this stuff. Well, now here's Brittany Griner just sealing Jordan Horston underneath the basket. And it's like, oh, we may can flatten some of these actions out, but we really can't take things away from the Phoenix Mercury, particularly when they're playing with good tempo. And so their offense, we used the vision word a little bit earlier. Like I think this is what the vision was for Nate Tibbetts. We got a lot of perimeter creators. We got a lot of players that can either shoot threes or generate threes because of their ball pressure. And if all else fails, here's former MVP Brittany Griner that there just isn't really an equal for on the block. You don't have someone that's both big enough to defend Brittany Griner and also valuable enough offensively to where you're not giving up something. And when you have that dynamic with all the talent that they have, like you can see where this Mercury team can be very dangerous.
No, I think just to compliment it, that is the vision. A team that had me in a headlock, it looks a lot cleaner once you have the possession ender of Brittany Griner and the size and the touches that can happen with the spacing that they have. I mean, if you look at a possession where, hey, we're going to set a pin down for Diana Taurasi, actually just go ahead and just go that way. Now we flow into Spain pick and roll. Now we don't have anything, but hey, here's a dribble handoff to Rebecca Allen. Nothing there. Oh, yeah, here's a post up. It makes it tough. I think the biggest thing is the Mercury compete. They compete. Like that to me stands out. They have competitors who like to compete together. And that's going to give them a shot almost every night. I think that stands out to me. And then I think the other portion of it is just the play of Kalia Copper and the consistency of attacking space and getting downhill and being able to cut when they go to elbow action and move. Diana Taurasi appears to be really enjoying playing with this team. Standing out to me, hey, I actually help in transition on defense. Got you. Like, again, they compete. So I think the vision coming together is key. We'll see if now they can actually get what they do to travel a little bit better than it has to start this season, because they are 5-2 at home and 2-5 on the road, and they're going to need that to flip at some point. But you have a better understanding of what they can do. And I think if they, as they continue to clean things up defensively, feel comfortable switching, Natasha Cloud will guard anyone in the W. Does not matter. And now being able to have that kind of rim protection or help from Griner helps. So I think it's just, this is kind of the buildup. This is what they can be. We'll see if they can hit another gear here.
That we shall see. Very quickly talked about Diana Taurasi and her having to juice, like, one, shooting well from deep, and she just remains an ever-present threat when she's on the perimeter. The Diana Taurasi drives, it's not something that I had baked in this year, but they've hit. They have hit so far. 35 players have driven the ball at least 50 times this year. The Phoenix Mercury generating a shade under 1.05 points per possession on any trip featuring a Diana Taurasi drive. That is sixth among those 35 players. Sabrina Ionescu's 1, Brianna Stewart 2, Asia 3, Ezzy 4, Lindsay Allen 5 in Chicago. And then on direct drive, so Diana Taurasi shoots or an assist opportunity from there, fifth among those 35 players. Courtney Williams 1, Sabrina Ionescu 2, Brianna Stewart 3, Ty Harris, who we mentioned for the Connecticut Sun, at 4, and DT. It's been kind of cool to see the shooting blend and the playmaking blend, and then also, hey, here are these drives, because I know you're not expecting me to get all the way downhill. It's been a nice start to the season for Diana Taurasi. It's kind of the inverse of what we saw last year, where it's like a little bit of a slow start with the shooting. And again, drives weren't hitting to that degree. We talked about the defense a little bit. This year, like, fully engaged on both ends of the floor. If the Mercury are going to get this version of DT in what is expected to be her swan song season, like, that's pretty good stuff. That's pretty good stuff. We can close this out talking about the Las Vegas Aces, who had one of the most dominant seasons in W history last year. They lost 7 games overall last year, 6 in the regular season, lost game 3 against Liberty in the finals. The Aces have already lost 6 times this year. They are 6-6. They are third in offense, so not a big drop from first to third, but the offense is roughly 8 points per 100 possessions worse than it was last year when they had the best offensive rating in W history. They are 10th in defense after being the league's best defense last year. And, like, there are things to point at, like, top of the list, Chelsea Gray just has not been available for the Aces yet. Per Becky Hammond, you can expect to see Chelsea soon. Now, we will see what soon means, as we are still waiting on Kirsten Bell to come back, but that's neither here nor there. But there hasn't been any Chelsea. Kelsey Plum mentioned during the halftime walking interview that she wasn't feeling well. Jackie Young has missed a game and has been kind of under the weather and a couple others. So there are things to point at with this Aces team. But more than anything, the defense has just not been the same this year. And this is something that Becky has hammered, Asia's hammered, just about any Aces player you ask. And even if you zoom out to just the Becky Hammond era, there's been consistent messaging from that locker room and from that team. We are at our best when we are able to play out of our defense. We are at our best when we're able to get stops, get out in transition, or just flow into early offense things. They just have not been able to do that this year. The containment on drives hasn't been there. And layered to that, and I argue just as if not more important, the trust in the containment isn't there either. And so now you're seeing more of these sequences to where a drive might actually be contained, but someone's peeled in for help because they don't think that it's going to be contained. And what should just be a contained drive turns into a wide open catch shoot opportunity or just a closeout attack, which on that front, the Aces, dead last in the WNBA in terms of closeout attacks defended. Over 1.1 points per possession on any trip featuring a closeout defended for the Aces right now. Dead last in the league. They're 11th in terms of efficiency defending drives this year. Their inability to keep the ball in front, I think, has played a part in just about all of their coverages being dinged this year. And until that portion of the program is fixed, like, I don't think we see the Aces of old. Now, with that said, like, I'm confident that it can get there. Again, we will see Chelsea Gray soon. As some of the star guard / wings feel better, they get a little bit of a break in the schedule. Like, I think they'll be able to return to form. I don't think people should be pressing the big red button on the Aces and saying that this is just it. They are a middling team. They're not going to compete, etc. Like, I think it's too early for that. And we have a somewhat recent example with the Chicago Sky in 2021 that dealt with a bunch of injuries, flirting around 500 all year long, and won a title. So I don't think it's over for them, but I do think it's fair to acknowledge the defense has been a big problem. And because their defense has been a big problem, they have had to face more set defenses on the other end. And with no Chelsea Gray there and just generally having more help points to deal with, it's been a bit hitchy for the Aces in the half court so far this year. Asia has been, I think, just the best player in the W this year, but it hasn't been enough to overcome like everything else that they're facing so far.
It's the defense. It's just the defense. It's just the defense. Like, all the chatter, we can talk a lot. It's just the defense. I think, as you mentioned, the formula for the Aces, when they're able to defend at such a high level, you now have to deal with them in transition. They get easy baskets, and you have to now deal with their talent in the half court. But they haven't had that many, half court possessions because they're getting stops and they're running. I think for me, when it comes to the defense, your trust point was huge because I don't think it's necessarily just because of the drives. I don't know if they have that same level of trust in each other that they've displayed over time. You watch pin downs where, okay, is it a drop? Am I supposed to help from the strong side? Automatics aren't necessarily automatics right now for this team. You see overhelps, as you mentioned, but also just overhelps in general to where, okay, am I supposed to do this? Are the switches as clean? Is the activity there that we've seen from the Aces traditionally? I don't know. I think that'll perk up. But I think it has to. The Aces offense hasn't necessarily felt like the Aces offense, right? You said they're what in offensive rating?
They are third.
They're going to be all right on that end, especially once you get Chelsea Gray back. But I think it's not just the lack of trust. I think more so it's sustaining defense. And I don't know if you can look this up, but it feels like 4, 5, 6 games in a row where the Aces defense actually comes out humming and they're up 8-2, and then it stops. And that's where it's like, okay, what are we doing? If it's a pick and roll, are we in a drop? Are we both sliding with it? Are we opening up the short roll? Who's helping there? Those kind of things are where if the Aces can be solid in those moments, how much different does it look? Because they run great stuff. They've always run great stuff. The flow could sometimes be a little up and down so far, but they'll figure that out. I mean, Kelsey Plum's drives are perking up. Jackie Young's been aggressive if you want to go under or switch. But can they just clean it up defensively and be a team that is active and cuts off the paint and makes you go deeper in the clock that we've seen before? When they mixed in zone, I was both intrigued and concerned, but I think it more so speaks to the fact that they just need to find a way to get stops and get back in rhythm.
And just quickly looking at like the quarter ratings on WNBA.com, the Aces In the first quarter, fourth in defense. In the second quarter, ninth in defense. In the third quarter, 11th in defense. In the fourth quarter, 10th in defense. So to your point about sustaining or just getting out to these hot starts and then things kind of going haywire, like that tracks statistically at the very least. And so I just wonder, like, again, like I think they can do it, and ultimately I think they will just be better. Like one in a literal sense, like they can't be much worse than they are right now defensively. They're literally 10 out of 12 teams. It's like in a literal sense, yes. But I do think as they get healthier and you start to see some of that trust come back, I think one of the underrated portions of Chelsea being out, like one, just to the defense overall, when the aces switch, Chelsea being able to guard up is very valuable to this group. And beyond that, and this is something that Asia talked about a little bit earlier. I'm trying to remember which game it was after the fact. Matter of fact, it was the Tiffany Hayes debut. And she made note, this is an Aces win, but she made a note that I'm glad that we were out there talking. I didn't feel like we did that much in the last game. Like Chelsea's ability to communicate, I think, shines through offensively, but she processes the floor just as quickly defensively, even if she isn't the best defender on the Aces. Like I think she's a very key component to what they do defensively and what they call out and being able to say, hey, this action's coming. That helps with some of the split second prep that you need. And I think that alleviates some of the split second decisions that you have to make. And thus, okay, I don't have to send this extra help because I know that you know what you're doing. You're going to be in position. I can just stay at home. And I think losing that on the margins, I think leads to some of the, here's the pin, like go back to the Mercury game that the Aces won. But hey, here's this pin down for Diana Taurasi. What are we doing with this? Are you staying attached to DT? Do I need to help you? If I don't help you, is there help coming from the nail so DT doesn't just have a free one? Or do I need to step all the way up? If I do step all the way up, is someone tagging from the opposite corner behind that so DT doesn't just get a roll behind me? And I think we saw a Diana Taurasi and one in that game. We saw one of the late rolls for that for Brittany Griner to get an easy one. And it's just stuff like that. Like, and as we've been doing this pod for a while, I feel like every year at some point of the season, I bring up, hey, so the Aces are getting an empty side pick and roll, huh? What's happening here? And like the fact that that certainly popped in that Saturday game against the Liberty, but it's been kind of popping all year. And like just the communication there, the screen navigation there. These are all fixable things for the Aces. So again, I do not subscribe to the Aces are done or anything like that, but this is a very clear problem area for them that has to get better for them to hit the level that they want to.
I feel very confident it'll be all right, especially once Chelsea Gray comes back. Because even then, the offense is going to get better. And if the offense is better, their defense can be set. So, I mean, this is very much a team that has a lot of buttons. Which one can we hit first? But this is a tough stretch. Like, I think history will show this stretch from June 11th to June 21st, where they face literally, I believe, the other 5 teams that we've talked about.
Yeah.
This is the time to get them, but this is the time for growth. And so we'll see if they can kind of get back to it and work through it and put themselves in a better position.
Yeah. So again, as we record on a Tuesday, they have the Storm tomorrow and they have the Sun on Friday. And then after that, it is Chicago, Washington, Indiana, Washington. So you get a little bit of reprieve there. And even with that, like they played the Sun on Friday on June 21st. Their next game against the Sky is on the 27th. So you just get the big break. And if I had to guess, I'll try to ask about this at some point this week. As Becky Hammond said, Chelsea Gray is back soon. If I had to guess, like it's probably the Sky or that first mix this game that Chelsea Gray comes back, just considering the gap in time and the amount of practice time they'll be able to get and stuff like that. Because as Becky was asked about it, she did say, because Chelsea was upgraded to questionable. People naturally like, wait a minute, she back? Becky did say we want to get a few 5v5 sequences under the belt for Chelsea before we bring her back. They haven't played since Saturday. Their next game is on Wednesday. You get a day break, you get Friday, and then you get darn near a week. That's going to be plenty of practice time for the Las Vegas Aces. So if I had to guess, the 27th or the 29th, I think is when we see Chelsea Gray come back. That'll allow her to get a few games in before the All-Star / Olympic break. And I think that's where you can see if the Aces are going to take off. And I think we both believe that they will. It'll probably start with this upcoming stretch. Any closing, even outside of these teams, any W thoughts or shout outs you want to get out before you head out of here?
Very fun to kind of track the race for the 8 seed. between the one team and the other team and the Sparks.
I love that. What is it? The bid?
Look, man. Go ahead.
That's amazing.
Go ahead and drop your notes, man.
Okay. Oh Lord! After that, I'll save it for Thursday. I just say very quickly, like I just feel bad for the Wings. This is an ungodly amount of injuries that they've had to deal with. Natasha Howard plays a game and she's just out, so I think she is returning soon. You haven't had Satu Sabali at all this year. Arike Gumbawale missed the Lynx game, dealing with Achilles soreness, which is just never what you want to hear at all. So I hope she's all right. I think listed as day-to-day, but again, anything with an Achilles, I'm just like, hey, please take your time. Like modern medicine is better and all that good stuff, but like, hey, if it's the A word, just come back at 110%, please. Especially with the Wings having the kind of start that they've had because of the injuries. I think 3-10, 3-11 right now. It's been nice to see some of these other players get opportunity. Like I think the Monique Billings run has just been tremendous for her. A hardship contract, and she has flourished at the Four this year. You've seen Maddie Seegers get legitimate playing time this year, and she's had good moments. Like Stephanie Suarez started last night. And we talked about her when we had the mailbag question about the rookies. Like, hey, this switching is kind of interesting. What's she going to do here? A lot of size and talent there. So, like, there are bright spots to look at with this Dallas group. But, like, just overall, I just hate that they're dealing with the amount of injuries that they are. And I'm just really curious to see, like, what this season is going to turn into for them. Is this just we sustain, we're going to be under 500, but we get Arike back, we get Satu back after the Olympic break, we get Natasha Howard back, early July. Let's just get into 7 or 8. And we can compete when we have the full complement because we're just a better team than our record right now? Or do you just play it more conservatively? Like, hey, we've gotten off to this kind of start. We know what this next draft class is going to look like. We have our pick this year. Let's just reset, make sure everyone is good, and we come back swinging in 2025. Again, like especially with the Olympic break mixed in, like the games do just kind of come quick. Like we're already more than a fourth of the way done this year. And so I do wonder like what those conversations are being like, what those conversations are like just among the front office. Because the players want to play, the coaches want to win, et cetera, like that. So above them, naturally. But just curious on the Dallas front. And then just very quickly with the Sparks. No, we're not talking deep about them, but man, Nekias Jackson is so good. She is so good. The Sparks, they just nailed their draft. You can come out with Cam Brink and Nekias Jackson. I think you feel pretty good about that. But Nekias is just she is such a refined scorer right now. And shout out a friend of the program and general friend, Mark Schindler, recently did a video on Nekias and her scoring prowess. So check that out on his YouTube channel if you haven't already. She's incredibly smooth. Also just projects as just a walking mismatch on the floor. So I've really enjoyed watching her play. Those would be my quick two. I'll save some stuff for
Thursday. Hamby Brink, Nekias is very fun to watch, and especially the different ways they use them. Real quick, Angel Reese, 6 consecutive double-doubles, tying the record for a first-year WNBA player. I believe 7 straight games of 10 or more rebounds, which is the record. Across the timeline, feel free to yell at me.
Tremendous content. Hey, we'll save it for like for episodes. We just really dig into it. This Rookie of the Year race is going to be interesting.
Also, Caitlin Clark, first rookie in WNBA history to have a game of 20-plus points, 9-plus assists, 8-plus rebounds, 2-plus blocks. Are you ready for the all-defense case?
All right. Thank you for listening to or watching.
Hold on. Are there any other Mark Schindler videos you want to promote, bud?
Well, let's go to the channel. I recently did one on Ty Harris, did one on Sabrina Ionescu and her drive.
Okay, all right, man. Just hit
that's the one you want.
I
see what you. Okay, I got you. Okay, I was like, did I miss a drop? Yeah, he did recently do one on Sabrina. Shout out to the UCLA cut. Diced up the sun with. But anyway, thank you for listening to and or watching this episode of Dunker Spot. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us. We are on Apple, Spotify, RIP Google, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. We are here on JJ Reddit's YouTube channel every Tuesday. That is the day after Monday, the day before Wednesday. So if you want the visual element, have some plays spliced in, you get to see Steve's reactions as I say something ridiculous or rub my eye. You can check that out every Tuesday. And in general, there's just great content dropping on the channel throughout the week, so you don't want to miss out there. You can follow me on Twitter at Nekias NBA. You can follow Steve on Twitter at SteveJones20. Join the Dunker Spot community if you haven't already. Join us for our online Dunker Spot watch parties. The NBA season is over, but basketball is not. So if you would like to hang out, watch some hoops with us, second screen it, hang out with a cool community of folks that love basketball and are generally just good people and funny people, come rock with us. The link is in the description. It's free to create your profile, no shenanigans. Come have some fun. And with that, we will catch y'all later in the week.
Good show, Nekias. Did you get the deflections counted?